We are going to be changing a capacitor in a 36-inch Hampton Bay ceiling fan. So first thing we're going to do is remove the light assembly so we can have access to our wires and capacitor. So as you're working on this, be sure to shut off your power because you'll be dealing with AC mains, which can shock you. So if you're not competent in working around electricity to do this project, be sure to hire an licensed electrician. So now that we have the light removed from its housing, we will just detach the wires with the quick disconnects. And now we will be removing the capacitor, and the capacitor is just held in with a couple of pieces of double-sided tape. Depending on how old your ceiling fan is, it might already be just hanging out in there. So just pull it apart, and we're going to be verifying the numbers of the capacitor. So this is a 5-wire capacitor, and the microfarad ratings are 4.5, 6, and 5. Yes, they are not in order. I don't know why. It is what it is. So I'm just gonna chop the wires off. Some of the wires go to your pull chain switch, which you can take the switch out and manually detach the wires from the switch, but I'm choosing to keep the wires in place, and then I will go ahead and strip them to about 10 to 11 millimeters. This will be the perfect stripping length to use my Wego connectors. So this is a perfect DIY wire connector for this type of project. You can use wire nuts if you choose to, or them crimp-on type connectors, them end connectors. So now I'll just verify that the capacitor fits in there, and kind of pre-planning on where the wires are going to go. So I'm going to be chopping the wires to about in half, so it makes it easier for installation. And I'm going to twist the strands together, and I'm going to start assembling and connecting the wires. So on the capacitor, there's going to be 2 wires that are going to have the exact same color, and that's our common wires. And in this particular case, they are going to be gray. So I will connect both gray wires to the common wires of the fan. Does not matter which one goes to which, as long as they're connected uh, gray for gray. Continuing on with the wiring, the replacement capacitor that I have, I chose to go up 1 microfarad. So the new capacitor has a microfarad rating of 5, 6, and 7. The additional like color between the two capacitors is going to be our red wire. So in this particular instance, both red wires will be connected together, and then our next wire we will be connecting will be from purple to brown. We will be changing the wire colors for that because that's just the way it is, because the different microfarad rating results in a different color wire for this particular installation. And then our final wire, we will be connecting the brown wire of the fan to the green wire of the capacitor. So to go over once again, for this particular setup, red will go to red, and purple from the fan will go to brown, and then the brown wire will go to green. And the Wago connectors are just a snap to close, and it's a very easy installation. And I am looking at the two capacitors just to make sure that the wire goes to the correct wire between the capacitor and the fan. So we're just going to install the capacitor back up as high and as far as it can go, and then you'll see me struggle a little bit when I put the light on because I have the capacitor a little bit too close to the outside of the housing, which will sort of hinder putting the light assembly back on. But I will eventually coax it and move it to the side a little bit so I can get that inner lip to fit inside housing. So it's just a matter of stuffing the wires back up into the housing and getting everything to line up, and then assembling the screws to put the light back on. So there's just 3 screws. I'm going to lightly tighten them, and then as I get the last one in, I'll do the final tightening of all 3 screws, so we make sure that that light housing is nice and secure. So now I'll turn the power back on, and yes, there's a switch right next to the fan so I can turn it on and off. And I yank the pull chain, and as I'm getting down off of my little perch, I already notice that the fan is spinning like it should. So now I'm going to go run and get the tachometer and take a reading. And the tachometer says about 237 RPMs, which is a lot faster than the about 175 that I was getting prior to changing the capacitors. So now I will do a finale segment. So we have successfully changed the capacitor in my Hampton Bay 30-inch ceiling fan, and now we got a top speed of about 240 RPM. I can feel the breeze. I can hear the fan running now. And on top of that, it's running about 30 RPM faster than this one. So here's the old capacitor, and this one is a 4.5, a 5, and a 6. Now, for whatever reason, it's not in order. So when I read this, it said 4.5, 6, and 5 microfarads. So I'm like, is this China or did somebody screw up? I don't know. It's just the way this thing was built. Where my replacement, it's an order, and it's a 5, a 6, and a 7 microfarad. I did go up 1. That's about it. I don't know what the microfarads have in relation with motor speed, if there is any relation to speed other than maybe torque. So, as far as I know, I gained, compared to this one, 30 RPM. So, I'm happy with that. That's good enough for me, as long as I can feel it. So, let's test this one to see what the microfarad is. So, we got my little China Pride little talking voltmeter, ohmmeter, and capacitor checker. So we'll use one of my Wagos to secure one of the test probes, so I don't have to hold it. And impressive with them little Wago connectors. That makes wiring very easy, and especially when you got to trim the wires. You know, I trim mine quite short, so I could just have an easier time of stuffing everything up in that little cup. So let's test this one and see what it is. So we got capacitance mode. So our wires here, we'll check our purple wire, which is our 5 microfarad, and we'll see what that is.
4.861 microfarad.
So we are 4.8 microfarads for our 5 microfarad position on our capacitor. So now we will test our brown wire, which is supposedly the 6 microfarad. And we are right at 6 microfarads. So now we have our red wire, which is our 4.5 microfarads. We are 2.1 microfarads. So that tells us that our 4.5 microfarad position on our capacitor is our high speed, because it's supposed to be 4.5 and we're only reading 2.1. So that is definitely our high speed. So I put a 5 in, and that increased the speed a little bit, supposedly. But comparing the two, this one is running about 210 and the other one was running about 240. So did it increase it, or is it just the capacitor is better? I don't know. Just the way it is. So, being that I did use a different capacitor, our wire colors are a little different. So, on our capacitor here, we got our 2 common wires, which are our 2 gray wires. And then we have our red wire, our brown wire, and our purple wire. So the red wire is the 4.5, the purple is the 5, and the brown is the 6. So on my replacement, you want to make sure you read, just in case there is an order difference. You definitely want to be sure to read your capacitors so you get the wire colors correct, even if they don't match correctly. So on this, between these two, there's only 3 wires that match: the gray wires and our red wire. So our red wire is our lowest capacitor, which is capacitance in microfarads, which is the 5. And then our next one is a 6 wire, our 6 microfarad, which is brown. So that's our medium number. So our medium number on our replacement is purple. So we're going from brown to purple. And then our final wire, which is our green wire, which is 7 microfarad, we are going to our brown wire. So we switched between the two, and each capacitor, depending on the microfarad, has a different wire color. So be sure to read your capacitors. Make sure you get our wire coating correct. So my assumption was correct that the fan was spinning slow on high speed. It was around 175, I think it was, compared to 210. And now we went from 210 to 240. So we're feeling the breeze. So that's it for this video. I hope you learned something how to change the capacitor on your ceiling fan. And we'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.